Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards on $1. I'm David.
And I'm Jasper.
And today we're going to be looking at a fun and effective Pauper deck you can build without breaking the bank.
And of course, on this channel we have one additional build rule, and it's that all cards must be under $1 in price.
Exactly, and today we have an awesome mono-red burn deck for you today.
Yes, mono red burn is of course a classic strategy. It's popular in Pauper, it's popular in Modern and Legacy. And the reason we are able to run this deck today is because there have been a few new cards printed and a few reprints that really brought down the price of this deck.
Exactly, and the win condition of this deck is basically to aggressively attack and burn our opponents all the way down to 0 before they get the chance to stabilize. So Jasper, what are the type of cards that we're going to be needing in this deck?
Well, we've got 7 attackers, which is a bit more than the classic burn deck, but it's a budget consideration. Then we have pingers, that are spells that do 1 damage to an opponent in various conditions that really supplement our strategy. Then we have 19 actual burn cards that can deal damage to the opponent's face. And then we have 2 cards that can really close the gap, finish out the game. And of course we've got our land and our sideboard.
Exactly, and here we have an example of 2 ideal starting hands. Jasper, could you give us a short rundown of why these 2 examples are so good?
Okay, yeah, the first hand is a bit more interactive. We've got a mountain and chain lightning on turn 1, then a mountain on turn 2, and then depending on what our opponents are playing, we can run out to kill the Marauders, ping 1 to the face, and have a beefy attacker that also pings again when it leaves the battlefield. Or we can run out the Thermal Alchemist. It's a bit more defensive, it's a good blocker, and it pings with our spells. And then we've got the Magma Jet. The Scry 2 can be very useful when we in a situation where we want more land or less land. It's really sculpted top of our deck. And then Flame Rift to close out the game. And of course, we also have a more aggressive hand. This one is really powerful. Turn 1, Mountain, suspend the Rift Bolt. Turn 2, Rift Bolt comes off the suspend, burns 3 damage. Play another mountain, we play the Lava Runner, we play the Skewer the Critics for the Spectacle cost. We have 2 instant sorceries in our graveyard. The Lava Runner has haste, it attacks, and we've done 8 damage to our opponent on turn 2.
That looks pretty sweet. Okay, so that is an overview of how the game can go. Now let's have a look at the individual cards, and let's start with the attackers. To start out the attackers, we have got 4 Gitu Lava Runners. Now, Gitu Lava Runner costs 1 red. We get a 1/2 Human Wizard, and as long as there's 2 or more instant or sorcery cards in our graveyard, this card is going to get +1, +0, and haste. So it's basically going to be a 2/2 haste. This thing comes in super early. We are playing burn, so it means we've got tons and tons of instant sorceries that are going to be in our graveyard. So very soon, we're going to be able to use this as a 2/2 haster.
Yeah. Now, of course, with our build, you won't be dropping it on turn 1 and swinging with it, but it's still a very aggressively costed creature that comes down early and just goes straight to the opponent's face. And of course, because we are burning the opponent, when we're swinging it in, they also always want to be blocking because those 2 damage really add up. So it's also something that keeps our opponent on the defensive. Yeah. Now, next up we have the Kill the Marauders. For 1 mana and a red, we have a Human Warrior with Vanishing 2 with Power and Toughness 3. And when it enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player. Now this is another very aggressive card. The Vanishing 2 means it comes in with 2 counters. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a counter, and then when the last counter is removed, it dies. But that means that we're pinging 1 extra damage. So we can drop it on turn 2, ping a damage, swing on turn 3. 3/3 can be very painful to deal with. And of course, like we said with the Lava Runner, they'll always want to be blocking. And then when it dies, it pings again.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good coming in and leaving as well.
Yeah.
That is it for the attackers. Let's have a look at the pingers.
Okay, first up we have the Thermal Alchemist. For 1 mana and a red, we have a Human Shaman with 0/3 Defender, and it taps to deal 1 damage to each opponent. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, that's you untap Thermal Alchemist. Now this of course gives you some very aggressive lines of play. The body itself is a very good blocker. So you could, in theory, block, play an instant speed burn spell, tap for 1, it untaps, you ping again, and that way it adds a lot of damage to your already powerful spells.
Yeah. Another card that's very similar, kind of the same role in this deck, is Firebrand Archer for 1 and a red. We get a 2/1 Human Archer, and this one states that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this guy's going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. So again, We pop this thing down early in the game. We can use it as an attacker as it does have 2 power, but yeah, make sure you don't lose it because every time we use one of our burn spells, we are going to be doing additionally 1 point of damage, and it's not only when we're using those instants and sorceries like with the Thermal Alchemist, but also if we were to play an enchantment such as the following.
Yeah. The final pinger is 4 copies of Curse of the Pierced Heart. It's 1 color and a red. It's an enchantment aura curse. It enchants a player. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, Curse of the Pierced Heart deals 1 damage to that player. So it's pings up more damage.
Very, very simple, but it's very consistent. Every time just dealing that damage, getting our opponent closer to 0.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of decks aren't even equipped to deal with auras. So you do drop it on turn 2 and on turn 6 they've eaten 3 or 4 damage off of it. And it really adds up over the course of the game.
Absolutely. That is it for the pingers. Let's have a look at the burn cards. The first of our burn spells is Chain Lightning. For single red, it's a sorcery that allows us to do 3 damage to target creature or player. But when we do that, then our opponent will also get the chance to pay red and then do also 3 damage to us or to one of our creatures. But if they do choose to do that, we can do it again back by paying the additional 2 red. And of course, this is not really relevant if we're not playing against opponents who are even playing red. And even if we are playing opponents who are playing red, they have to be pretty heavy in red to be able to pay the 2.
Yeah, and of course, with the way our deck is built, we can take better advantage of the Chain Lightning ping pong than they can usually.
Exactly.
Then next up we have Skewer the Critics. It's a new card from Ravnica Alliances. For 2 mana and a red, it's a sorcery that says deal 3 damage to any target. And of course it has a spectacle cost for 1 red. So you may pay it for the spectacle cost if your opponent has already been dealt damage this turn. And of course we've got a lot of stuff like Thermal Alchemist that make it really easy to enable the spectacle cost.
Yeah. Then we have Rift Bolt for 2 and a red. It's a sorcery as well, and it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. But it also has to spend 1 for 1 red mana, which means that we can pay 1 red mana, then we're going to exile this card, and then next turn we're actually going to cast it for free.
Yeah, and of course the nice thing about Suspend is that it also it creates a bit of a mind game situation with your opponent. Say you're on the play, you play your Rift Bolt turn 1, then they might not play their turn 1 creature out of fear of it being burned.
Exactly. Then we have Incinerate for 1 and a red. So for 2, it's an instant this time. It deals 3 damage to target creature or player. A creature dealt damage its weight cannot be regenerated. So mostly this is just very important because it allows us to do instant speed shenanigans with this.
Yeah, of course the can't be regenerated is very rarely relevant in Pauper, but it's still strictly better than Lightning Strike.
Correct.
And then we have Magma Jet. It's another instant. For a color and a red, we deal 2 damage to target creature or player. It's a bit less effective than our other burn spells, but what really makes it nice is the Scry 2, which means that you can easily sculpt the top of your deck to create an advantage situation, whether you have too much land or too little land. It really makes your later game plays a lot more smoothly.
Absolutely. That is it for the burn spells. Let's have a look at the finishers.
As our finisher, we're running 2 copies of Flame Rift. It's a sorcery for a colorless and a red, and it deals 4
damage. Not for a colorless and a red. Okay. It's for 1 and a red.
Yeah. Our finishers are 2 copies of Flame Rift. It's a sorcery for 1 and a red. It deals 4 damage to each player, so it burns yourself as well. But of course, hopefully we'll be going so aggressively to the face that the 4 damage to us doesn't matter, and it really closes out the game for just 2 mana. It gives us a lot of extra reach.
Absolutely. That is it for the finishers. Let's have a look at the lands. We divided the lands into 17 mountains and 3 Forgotten Caves. Now, Forgotten Caves come in taps for a red mana, but we can cycle it for a single red mana, which is nice because later on in the game, when we don't really want to be having any more lands, we can simply cycle this card away and hopefully draw into one of our burn spells, for example.
Yeah, we have an extremely low curve. All of our spells basically cost 1 or 2 effectively, and top decking a Forgotten Cave means that you're not mana flooded. You can cycle it away for a minimal cost and get something better.
Yeah, and we actually have a few more lands, 2 more lands than the traditional Pauper burn deck. Jesper, can you explain to us why that is?
Yes, like I said, we do have a very low curve, but we run a few more creatures than normal. We do tend to have some spells that we maybe want to cast for a regular cost, something like Skewer the Critics. So if we do top deck a Skewer the Critics and we don't have something on the board that lets us do the damage to make the spectacle cheaper, we can still cast it for its regular cost. And 3 mana really isn't that high.
Exactly. All right, that is it for the lands. Let's have a look at the sideboard.
First up, we have Martyr of Ashes. For 1 red mana, we have a human shaman, 1/1, with an activated ability. For 2 mana, we can reveal X red cards from our hands and sacrifice it, and it deals X damage to each creature without flying. Now this is a very nice, it's basically the only kind of board wipe you're going to get in Pauper. And we're playing mono red, so we can always activate it for 2 or 3, which makes it better than a card like, say, Electricity, especially against a pesky Elves player who might have a Spider Silk armor in play. Then we can still burn out their whole board for 2 or 3.
Yeah, very nice. Then we have Smash the Smithereens for 1 and a red. It's an instant that allows us to destroy target artifact, and we're also going to be doing 3 damage to that artifact's controller. So this is nice. You got that artifact hate, and it still helps us as well in that burn race that we're playing.
Yeah, it's always very nice to be able to play a sideboard card that helps against a specific strategy without compromising what you're actually trying to do with the deck. Next up, we have 3 copies of Raze. It's a sorcery for 1 red mana. As additional cost, sacrifice a land and destroy target land. So we're losing a land and an extra card, but there's a lot of decks in Pauper that don't like having specific lands burned out. You've got, of course, your Urzatron, also your Ravnica Karus, and with the low curve we're playing, losing that 1 land usually doesn't matter in the long run.
Exactly. Up next is a Stagger Shock, and we have 2 of these for 2 and a red. So for 3 mana, it's an instant that allows us to deal 2 damage to target creature or player. And you may say, okay, that's actually, that's pretty expensive for the amount of damage. But the beauty of this is that it's a rebound card, which means when we play it, the next turn at the beginning of our upkeep, we're actually going to cast it again before it goes into our graveyard. So essentially, we can deal with 2 things for our 1 card, which is pretty nice for people who want to play a lot of smaller creatures against us.
Yeah, as David said, it's 2 for 1. And of course, if we burn 1 creature and they don't play a creature on the next turn, then we can still shoot 2 damage to the face.
Yep.
Next up, we have Sting Scourger. For 1 and a red, we have a 2/2 Goblin Warrior with Echo, 3 and a red. And when it enters the battlefield, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Now, this is a very unorthodox card for red. It came out of Planar Chaos originally, so that tells you something about the complexity level. What's very nice about this set is that it gives us a way to deal with cards like Gurmak Angler, Hooting Mandrills, cards that we might not be able to deal with our conventional burn spells. And of course, because of the way Delve works, it really sets an opponent back if we can bounce an early Gurmak Angler.
Yeah, and don't really worry about having to pay the echo cost. I mean, once the things come into play, it's already done what it had to do.
Yeah.
And if you can, and you don't have anything else to do, you obviously still can to have a 2/2, but it's not really that important.
No.
Then the last of our sideboard cards, Nihil Spellbomb. For 1 mana, it's an artifact, and we can tap it and sacrifice to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. And additionally, if we would pay black, then we would also draw a card, but we can't do that. Regardless, it's still a solid card against those graveyard strategies.
Yeah.
That is it for the sideboard. Let's have a look at the conclusion.
So in conclusion, this is a very fun deck to play and build. It's a proven strategy, and it has a few minor tweaks compared to the mainstream strategy, all budget considerations, but of course it's also a very good place to start if you want to get into Pauper but maybe not want to drop $50 on it. You drop 20, you've got this deck, and then you can always add in the more fun cards later.
Yeah, I also really enjoy this deck because of how fast it is, how hard it is for people to deal with, and if people have something, for example, which allows them to gain life, this deck does have the answer to be able to get rid of that, and then they still can't stop you from burning them out. So it's also aggressive and very simple to play.
Yeah.
So I think that is what makes it a lot of fun. It's also quite affordable, right?
Yeah, it's $17.77 at the time of this recording.
Exactly. Now, if you like these videos, if you want to help us make more, head on over to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and consider donating as little as $1 a month. It really helps us keep the lights on over here, and we'd like to thank all our current patrons for helping us out. Also, if you want to talk to us, give us suggestions for non-budget upgrades, for example, then head on over to our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter @budgetmtgdecks, and we can have discussions there. And of course, don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube for the most powerful decks and advice everyone can afford. And if you do, also don't forget to hit the little bell button to be notified when a new video comes out. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm David.
And I'm Jasper.
And this is Budget MTG Decks.